My ex-wife's family called me worthless dreamer with a keyboard. Now they're begging to work for my $300 million tech company. I, 33 never thought I'd be writing this. But life has a way of coming full circle in the most unexpected ways. 10 years ago, I was working as a junior developer at a small tech company, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, and madly in love with my then-girlfriend. We'd been together since college, and despite my modest income, we were happy. Or so I thought. Things changed when I proposed. That's when her family started showing their true colors. Her father, a successful real estate mogul, pulled me aside during a family dinner and asked about my career aspirations. When I explained my plans to start my own software company, he actually laughed. Right there, in front of everyone. Tech startups are for dreamers, he said, swirling his expensive scotch. Real men build tangible businesses. My then-fiancée just sat there, staring at her plate. Her mother took it a step further, suggesting I consider joining their real estate business instead, starting from the bottom, of course. At least it's a reliable future, she said with that condescending smile I grew to hate. I stuck to my plans, working my day job while coding my software idea at night. My fiancée became increasingly distant, constantly comparing our lifestyle to her friends who'd married successful men. The final straw came when I overheard her on the phone with her sister, calling me delusional for turning down her father's offer. He's worthless, she said. Just a guy with a keyboard and impossible dreams. We broke up 2 months before the wedding. She kept the ring. It was compensation for wasted time, according to her family. I moved into an even smaller apartment, lived on ramen, and poured everything into my work. The next 2 years were a blur of coding, pitching to investors, and sleeping on a mattress on the floor. My break came when a major tech company noticed my software solution for supply chain management. They didn't just want to buy it. They wanted me to lead the development of an entire ecosystem around it. I negotiated for equity instead of a pure buyout. That decision changed everything. 5 years later, my company is valued at just over $300 million. We have offices in 3 countries, and I'm known for revolutionizing how small businesses handle their logistics. I barely thought about my ex or her family anymore, until last week. I was reviewing job applications for our new regional office when a familiar name caught my eye. It was my ex-wife's younger brother, applying for a senior position. His resume was impressive, but what really got me was the cover letter. He wrote about admiring our company's innovation and wanting to be part of our visionary team. Then yesterday, my HR director forwarded me another application, this time from my ex's father himself, proposing to join our board of advisors, citing his extensive business experience. The same man who called me worthless now wrote about my brilliant business acumen and industry-changing vision. I haven't responded to either application yet. Part of me wants to forward them the transcript of that dinner conversation from 10 years ago, which I'd recorded on my phone after growing suspicious of their treatment. Another part wants to invite them for interviews just to see them squirm. But I know those are emotional responses, not business decisions. The thing is, my ex's brother is genuinely qualified, and her father's connections could benefit the company. But every time I think about working with them, I remember those nights in my old apartment, crying over my keyboard, doubting everything because of their words. I remember how they made me feel worthless for daring to dream. My new girlfriend, a fellow tech entrepreneur, says I should evaluate them purely on merit. Success is the best revenge, she says. Show them you're better than they were to you. But is it really that simple? Can you work with people who once took pleasure in crushing your dreams? Tomorrow, I have to make a decision. The board is meeting to review key hires, and these applications will come up. I've built this company on innovation, on seeing potential where others see problems. But I'm human, and these people hurt me deeply. They didn't just doubt my dreams. They tried to convince me I was worthless for having them. I spent most of last night reviewing their applications again. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., and I hadn't slept much. Around 3 a.m., my girlfriend found me in my home office, surrounded by old photos and documents from that period of my life. She took one look at me and made us both coffee. "You're overthinking this," she said, sitting cross-legged on my office couch. That's when my phone buzzed. It was an email from my ex-wife. My hands shook as I opened it. She wrote that she'd heard about her family's applications from her mother and wanted to clear the air before things got complicated. She suggested meeting for coffee to discuss the situation like adults. 10 years of silence, and now this. I showed the email to my girlfriend, who raised an eyebrow. "Interesting timing," she said. She wasn't wrong. The company had just been featured in Forbes, and our expansion plans were public knowledge. Our stock price had doubled in the last quarter alone. I decided to meet my ex-wife. Not at some coffee shop, but at my office. If we were going to have this conversation, it would be on my terms. She arrived exactly on time, dressed in an expensive business suit, looking almost exactly like she did 10 years ago. Almost. The moment she stepped into my office, I saw something I'd never seen before: nervousness. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a new one, much bigger than the one I'd given her. "Your office is impressive," she said, looking at the view of the city. I waited, letting the silence do the work. Finally, she spoke. "I know what you must think about their applications," she began. "But they've changed. Dad's business took a hit during the recession, and he's been—" She paused, searching for words. "He's been talking about you. About how he was wrong." I couldn't help but laugh. "Wrong about what? About me being worthless? About tech startups being for dreamers?" Her face flushed. I played the recording from that dinner, now digitally enhanced and crystal clear. Her father's voice filled the room. "He'll never amount to anything. He's just not our kind of people." She sank into the chair across from my desk. "I didn't know you had that," she whispered. "Does the board know about their applications?" she asked. I nodded. "The meeting's in an hour." She straightened up, switching to what I recognized as her negotiation pose. "They need this," she said. "Dad's company is struggling, and my brother hasn't had stable work since his firm downsized." "And what do I need?" I asked. The question hung in the air between us. She didn't have an answer. That's when my assistant buzzed. The board was gathering early. My ex-wife stood up, smoothing her skirt. "For what it's worth," she said, "I was wrong too. Not just about you, but about what success really means." She reached for her purse and pulled out a small box. Inside was the engagement ring I'd given her a decade ago. "I kept it as a reminder," she said, "of the biggest mistake I ever made." I left the ring on my desk and headed to the board meeting. My mind was racing. Her father's application painted him as a visionary businessman who'd recognized our company's potential early on. Her brother's resume listed achievements that aligned perfectly with what we needed. On paper, they were good candidates. As I walked into the boardroom, I saw my girlfriend in her usual seat. As our CTO, she'd worked just as hard as I had to build this company. She gave me a subtle nod. Whatever I decided, she had my back. The other board members were reviewing the applications on their tablets. They didn't know the history. To them, these were just two more candidates for our expanding team. I took my seat at the head of the table, the recording from that dinner secure in my phone, my ex-wife's old engagement ring in my pocket. In 5 minutes, I'd have to present my recommendations. The same people who had once called me worthless were now waiting to hear if I thought they were worthy. The irony wasn't lost on me. My assistant brought in fresh coffee and the updated hiring reports. I could see my ex-wife through the glass walls, still waiting in my office. She'd taken the photo of my girlfriend and me off my desk and was staring at it. 10 years ago, her family had tried to crush my dreams. Now their future partly depended on my decision. The board secretary called for attention. It was time to begin. I looked down at the applications in front of me, thinking about karma, justice, and business decisions. The recording sat in my phone like a loaded gun. I could play it right now, in this whole discussion before it began. Instead, I took a deep breath and opened the first file. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. I presented each application methodically, highlighting qualifications, potential contributions, and areas of concern. I discussed her brother's technical expertise and recent projects. I outlined her father's business connections and experience managing large teams. Not once did I mention our history. My girlfriend watched me carefully as I spoke, probably wondering if I'd play the recording. The other board members asked typical questions about cultural fit, salary expectations, and growth potential. They seemed impressed by both candidates, especially her brother's innovative approach to project management. Then our HR director raised a point I hadn't considered. Their family connection could be valuable, she said. Having a father-son team with their combined experience could help us bridge the gap between traditional business and tech innovation. Several board members nodded in agreement. That's when I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. But instead of playing the old recording, I pulled up our company's first pitch deck from 8 years ago. "Before we vote," I said, "I want to remind everyone what we stand for." I showed them our original mission statement: to empower dreamers with the tools to build tomorrow. That had been my response to everyone who said my ideas were worthless. Slide after slide, I walked them through our journey from a tiny startup to what we'd become. "We're not just hiring employees," I said. "We're choosing people who will shape our company's future. Their qualifications matter, but so does their belief in what we do." I looked directly at my girlfriend as I continued. Sometimes people can surprise you. Sometimes they can change. The board voted. Her brother was approved for the position, pending standard background checks and interviews. Her father's application for the advisory board was declined, not because of our history, but because his experience didn't align with our current needs. "We need tech visionaries," the board agreed, "not traditional business advisors." After the meeting, I returned to my office. My ex-wife was gone, but she'd left a note next to the photos she'd been holding. "You built something beautiful," she wrote. "Not just the company, but the life you have now. I'm sorry we couldn't see it back then." I called her brother first. The conversation was awkward but professional. I told him he'd have to interview like any other candidate, and his work would speak for itself. He thanked me repeatedly, then hesitated. "I know this might not mean much now," he said, "but I was wrong about you." We all were. The call with her father was shorter. I explained the board's decision professionally, offered to connect him with other companies that might better fit his expertise. He started to argue but stopped himself. "I suppose I deserve this," he said finally. "For what it's worth, you proved me wrong. Completely wrong." That evening, my girlfriend found me in the office again. "You did good," she said, sitting beside me. "Better than they deserved." She picked up the engagement ring my ex had returned. "Want me to get rid of this?" I took the ring and walked to the window. The city lights sparkled below, reminding me of all those nights I'd spent coding, dreaming of moments like this. I thought about karma, about redemption, about the fine line between justice and revenge. "Keep it," I said, handing her the ring. "Put it in the company museum with the first server we ever bought." A reminder that sometimes the best revenge is proving people wrong by succeeding on your own terms. She smiled and kissed me. "You're too nice," she said. I'd have played that recording in the meeting. We both laughed, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. Later that night, I sent a company-wide email announcing our new hires, including my ex's brother. I ended it with a quote I'd kept on my wall during the darkest days. "Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." My phone buzzed one last time. A message from my ex-wife. "Thank you for being better than we were." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my phone, took my girlfriend's hand, and left the office behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions. But for now, I was content knowing I'd stayed true to myself and the company I'd built. Some might call me foolish for giving her brother a chance. Others might say I was too harsh with her father. But business decisions shouldn't be about personal revenge. They should be about growth, innovation, and creating something meaningful. That's the real difference between them and me. I never lost sight of what I was building, even when they could only see what they thought I was worth. As we drove home, my girlfriend squeezed my hand. "You know what this means, right?" she asked. "Family dinners are going to be really interesting." We laughed all the way home, and I realized that success truly is the best revenge, not because it proves others wrong, but because it frees you from needing to.